Grayson will give him the later. Sammy. David.
Did you give all your puppies away?
Emma.
Oh, Stella, gone.
Yeah, should we
That was-
Boy,
And that'd
Emma.
be the end. So how did it feel? Oh, really?
Thank you, Sue. I had that for you.
Check and make sure you didn't get a double before you stick it together. Thank y'all so much for participating.
Yeah, I think yeah, here it is. They got stuff.
Yeah. Has anybody got two?
Okay, are we ready to get started this morning? How is everybody? Good? Y'all seem like you're far away.
We are.
I know how Jeff feels every Sunday morning now when he stands up there and everybody's in the back of the church. Let's go over our prayer list. I have Dr. Ezell, Daryl Landry, Ann Watt, Andrea Jackson Clark, Dot Burr, Buddy Clark, Mary Jones, Leon McLean, Jean Snively, James Creech, Debbie Milligan. Sarah, you heard anything about Debbie?
No.
Sarah
I'm gonna try to
Wilcox,
see her this week.
Edgar Evans, Eddie McGibson, Joyce Roberts. Of course, we're still grieving and praying for our military and our whole country and the people that are still struggling with the hurricane and our hospital. Kathy Gibson Stone, I understand she's home, but I don't really know what the status of her health is.
Her sister said yesterday, I saw her, and that she was still having a lot of pain. But yeah, she's home, and so they're trying to do what they can to get the pain down.
Yeah, and Fred is on our prayer list. I talked to Carol this morning. She said he had surgery Friday. Yesterday was a really rough day pain-wise, but she said they finally got it under control, and he was fairly comfortable this morning.
If you would add David McMillan.
When I give it back to you.
I will. David had knee replacement done Friday,
Okay.
and they sent him home, of course, that night, so he's been in a lot of pain.
Oh, my gosh.
See, can I interrupt? I've got a little card for Fred.
Oh, good.
I'd just like to sign it, and I thought we could send it to
I'll
him.
take it when I go. I can
Okay.
put it in there, Cubby.
Perfect.
Nita's not feeling well today. She won't be here. I don't know what's wrong. She talked me to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, our lesson today centers around David and his near obsession with the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant. Does anybody know what's in the Ark?
Let's see, some of the manna from the,
Yeah,
Well, didn't they have the commandments at one
Yes.
time in
They were.
there?
and Aaron's rods.
Yeah, God is not in the ark.
No. And there was a lot of issues with the ark during the reign of Saul. David and Saul really pulled and pushed against each other. And it had been a great grievance to Israel that the covenant, the ark wasn't where they were. And so they had to defeat the Philistines twice in order to get it. And David felt the real need to bring the Ark of the Council to the city of Jerusalem, city of David. So it would be near him as an ornament for the tabernacle and to give him strength for his new city and whatever. He really held the ark in true reverence. And in that day, it really did represent God to them. the ornation of the ark itself. I learned a new word this time. Yehu, Yami, what was that word? Yahweh. Yahweh. And that is a ornate piece of history, so to speak, that's on the ark that sort of represents God. And then there's the cherubs on there and stuff. And it was really sacred. The Levites were the only ones that could carry it, and they couldn't touch it. And you had to put poles in it and put them on your shoulder and move it. And if you touched it, the penalty was death. So it was quite reverent to the Jewish people. They and when David got ready to go get it, he gathered as many men as he could. I think somewhere in there said that there was about 3,000 men that went with him. And they set the ark on a cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab. Say that for me, Marilyn. Abinab, that's right. And Abinab's son drove the cart. And they all rejoiced. David and all the people, they played instruments, they danced. And David even wore a ephod, which is a priest apron. So, and they set the tent, set it in the tent where that David had built specifically for a tabernacle, so to speak. And then they sacrificed burnt offerings and had fellowship offering before the Lord. And then after that, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty. And then he gave them each, and there were 3,000 of them, a loaf of bread, date and raisin cakes. He gave it to each person. And I thought that was interesting because he wanted those people to think highly of him. He wanted them to think that he was a really good person. But as we know the story of David, he hasn't always been the good son he was supposed to be. But there's an interesting part of this chapter that they completely left out. And I don't know why they do that, but I'm going to read the lesson, and I'm going to read from 1 through see how far does it go? 1 through 19. David again brought together all the able young men of Israel, 30,000, not 3,000. He and all his men went to Bala in Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubs on the ark, and that's where the Yahweh thing sits. They set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart with the ark on it, and one was walking in front. David of all Israel and all of Israel were celebrating with all their might before the Lord with castanets and harps and lyres and timbrels and sistrums and cymbals. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out and took hold of the ark because the oxen stumbled. The Lord's anger burned against Esau because of his irreverent act, and therefore God struck him down, and he died beside the ark of God. And that goes along with what I was talking about today. Earlier, you couldn't touch it. You couldn't physically touch it. The penalty was death. And David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, "How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me?" He was not willing to take the ark of the Lord to be with him in the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house there, the Gittite, for 3 months, and the Lord blessed him and his entire household. Now, King David was told, "The Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the ark of God." So David went to bring up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. When those who were carrying the ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps, and I'm not sure why that's significant. Do you know? Okay. He sacrificed a bull and a fattened cat, wearing a linen ephod, which is the priestly apron. David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, while he and all of Israel were bringing the ark up to the Lord, and shouts from the sounds of trumpets as the ark of the Lord entered the city of David. Michal's daughter of Saul, who was King David's wife, she thought his dancing was not appropriate, but she despised him. I'm not sure, again, why that was brought into the lesson. I couldn't quite figure out what the significance of that was. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before the Lord. After he had finished sacrificing the burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty. Then he gave a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins to each person of Israel, both men and women, and they all went to their homes. So, rejoicing and being joyful in worship of the Lord is a really good thing. But we have to be careful how we do it, when we do it, and where we do it, and for what reason. I think that's the lesson of this, or the point of this lesson, that some people don't think it's appropriate for the place of worship to have joyful singing or instruments or music and all of that way. And this lesson tells us that there's nothing wrong with that if your heart is in the right place. And in the lesson it talks about how we often are conflicted by what we do and how we do it and whether it's appropriate or not. But what I gleaned from the lesson was that as long as it was consistent and that we did the worship week after week, and we do the work of the worship, that we don't just come and sit. When I say come and sit, I guess I'm referring to church, which is our place of worship. But you don't have to be in church to worship. but you should express recognition of the presence and existence of God all the time. All the time. And while at the same time submitting ourselves to God's lordship over our lives. We don't need an ark in our modern day today to feel the presence of God, which is what I think that David was looking for when he brought the ark back to Jerusalem. He was looking for the comfort and the assurance that God's presence was there with the Israelites. But we know that all we have to do is acknowledge God's presence, that He is always with us. And we just should really kind of hand ourselves over to the Lord and worship Him. The Bible verse, pray without ceasing, came to my mind when I was trying to prepare this lesson. And worship without ceasing is the theme of this lesson to me. And I'm not sure how else to interpret this lesson other than it's our responsibility to lead other people into worship. Believers will follow those who follow God. And that was pretty evident by David. He had 30,000 people following him, and to get the ark, because to me, to them, that was their God, that was their strength, that was their ability to worship. So we just have to be careful that when we do worship, that it's the right way, because sometimes we do the wrong thing for the right reason, if that makes any sense. Like the two that fell down, or the person who fell down dead for touching the ark. He thought he was doing what was right because the oxen was stumbled. He didn't want the ark to fall. And I don't know why that is so strict in this Bible verse, that he was trying to save it. So he did the wrong thing for the right reason. So
I always had a little problem understanding that too.
I did. So when we do things God's way, we're assured of success and joyful results. And I guess that's the point of it. I don't know what would have happened to the ark if he hadn't caught it. You know, it kind of threw me off that point. Do you have anything to add to that, Madeline?
I wouldn't look at what would have happened if you didn't catch it, because I mean, that's kind of what if. But I think it kind of drives the point home the point of how important how we worship is, how we follow God's commandments are. And I kind of look at they fell dead kind of as almost hyperbole. You know, if we go into our sanctuary and somebody drops an offering plate, are they going to drop dead? You know, but everybody would go, you know,
Yeah.
or the communion bread, if they were to drop that. I don't think they're going to drop dead, but that's just something you want to be very, very careful with.
Yeah.
And with Micah, when she said, whatever she said to about David, she was Saul's daughter.
Yeah.
And David's king. And usually there's a line of lineage, and that's not how David became king. David became king how?
By killing Saul.
because God wanted David
And-
to be
yeah.
king.
But he ended up killing Saul too, didn't he?
Well, she was just really angry that,
Is that why it said she despised him?
yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. That's why she despised him. He
Yeah.
shouldn't be king in her eyes,
Yeah.
but yeah. And think about when we worship, think about our bulletin and how does it start? It doesn't start with an invocation. What is an invocation?
It's a prayer.
It's calling someone in. Well, God's already there.
Yeah.
God is the one that calls us in. So our worship is really focused on God, acknowledging God is there, praising God for what God is doing and has done in our lives and the lives of our ancestors, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, God always deserves worship, but especially when he has blessed us, our efforts to please him so much. True spiritual leaders will consistently pray for their followers and show their appreciation for them. So God always shows his appreciation to us for our worship. And we just have to sit back and be open and recognize what it is that he is doing and saying and being for us to show his appreciation to us. I mean, he chose us. We didn't choose him. I mean, we did, but he chose us first. And I just thought this whole lesson was on making sure that we understood how important it is to worship God, but to worship him in the right way.
Do y'all remember when liturgical dance first came on the stage? Did y'all have liturgical dance here in that bay?
The first time I saw it was in Montreux. When they did
Probably,
it,
yeah.
this girl did to the Lord's Prayer. And I thought, oh my gosh. You know, that was my reaction at first.
Yeah, I
But
was,
then I came to love it.
yeah,
I
but
think I
at
love-
first
I've never
was
seen
like-
it, and I've never heard of it.
You never heard of it?
No.
You still haven't heard of it now?
Well, no.
It's a dance you do in church to a Bible verse or a song. and
Like
you
this one
usually
was
have
to-
scarves and
Yeah.
it's like ballet or
It's
something
really
like
just
that.
smooth
Yeah.
and flowing. This
Yeah.
one was, when I first saw it. And I was just amazed, but I thought, oh my gosh, we were in Montreux, so I figured it was okay.
But that's how the church is.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it was like,
Uh-huh.
this is
Uh,
sacrilegious. You
well-
can't do that.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, something Dr. Ezell said to me when I first came to worship here at the church, I thought was really strange because it went against what I perceived as the way to worship. He said to me, "We don't have any clappy happy music here at Faith Presbyterian Church."
He was
said-
very,
He, you know, and the hymns that he chose were all very solemn and awful to sing. And I just thought, you know, what happened to making a joyful noise unto the Lord? That was the one thing that I thought it was interesting that he would even say that. But that's how he saw worship and how he presented worship. And
That's how it used to be 50 years ago. That's why the Presbyterians are called the frozen
Yeah.
chosen. You would never clap after an anthem or a solo. I mean, that was just, and even now sometimes I get like, yes, let's clap, you know. But you
did
did.
hear that liturgical dance too.
Oh, where
How
was
it
that?
was skepticism.
I was talking about music, the Booth Brothers are gonna be in Laurel Hill at the Baptist Church today, and they're good. They're
Yeah.
gospel music.
Uh-huh.
Baptist Church.
oh, I agree there too.
They're just good.
I said, I love music and
6 o'clock.
happier music is. It
Oh,
makes
that's
you
why I said, I love it, it should be like
feel
that. That's what they go to another one, I think.
So,
I thought about that when everybody was telling me, y'all don't do that.
print their church.
But yes,
I
we
thought
do
that we- I
now.
thought it, I mean.
I think it's appropriate to, as we talked, it's important for the leaders of the church to show their appreciation for what the members of the church do to worship God, and I think that's part of it. So,
They could even go back to a few of the old ones, all that we know.
Jeff tries to do
He
that.
does every once in a while.
And, I mean,
like
they've
it.
taken everything out of our,
You have to print the music off.
that's right. That's why he liked it when they were filming the worship service, because he could pick any hymn from anywhere.
And I like it.
well, that's the essence of what I had to say today. Does anybody have anything to offer?
I think that was good. Sue.
That's good,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, well, let's turn to page 8 and do our closing prayer. Holy God, guide our response to you so that we don't turn you into a magic formula in our lives. Allow our praise, O God, to be to you and for you, recognizing your mighty deeds. Amen. I hope as we go along in this particular book that the lessons get a little easier. They seem to be, to me, every as we go along, they all get, I didn't get to sign it. Got a pen?
We've done that really in surgery. Did you have time to
He didn't, it wasn't hammer toes.
No, he had some,
She does edit it out.